Are we living through the most addictive period in human history?
He was wrapped up in porn addiction, but I knew he was struggling, and I knew I wasn't able to help him in the way that I was able to help my other clients. The impact of it on men in particular, their relationships and their families. That's how pornography addiction is. It starts by a crack in brain functioning, brain dysregulation, brain dysfunction. And from that crack, that's where mental health issues unfold. I think most people don't understand how everything connects. Super stressed out, super exhausted, pushing through, using porn to self-medicate, soothe and stimulate. The dopamine receptors in the reward center become desensitized. The brain becomes stuck in neutral. That's why arousal dysfunction happens. Your brain is linked to the thing that you linked it to, and that can be different for different people. Your brain's linked to it, and you're using the reinforcement loops to get the dopamine from the source that you've trained it. For the first time in history, masculinity is really at risk because of this. Don't believe anything until your brain is regulated so you can make that decision from a healthy standpoint.
What's the biggest lie amongst all this that men tell themselves and they believe?
Do you want to be average? Do you want to be above average? Do you want to stand out? I mean, are you in this game just to have a fight, or are you in this game to become the champion? It's time.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Men's Collective podcast, a place where you're going to get real men with the real talk and none of the BS. Wayne Taylor here, and joined again by the above average fellas, the average Joes. Boys, thanks for joining me once again.
Guys, the bar just got raised, didn't it?
Indeed, yeah. Well, last week you were the below average Joes, and now you're the above. Well, Jamie's back, so...
How a week things change, eh?
Hey, boys.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for carrying us.
Yeah, thanks for... Yeah. Well, look... first of all, thanks for joining us again. We're not going to do our normal Ask Us Anything all this week because we do have a special guest which I am going to introduce to you guys very, very soon. But I do want to catch up on our accountability that we've introduced a couple of weeks ago. Don't ask me because it's really bad at it. But how'd you guys go, Stevo?
Mixed results. Doing better, but I lapsed Wednesday night. Had a real rough week. They say don't do anything when you're angry, hungry, or lonely. And I was all three in Woolworths, and mate, it cost me a fortune. But they're all still sitting in the cupboard. I got blocks of chocolate, I got biscuits, and I'm slowly hemmorraging them out to my kids instead. So
Ready for the next health crisis. It's good.
Yeah, I put myself on the edge, but I'm doing okay still.
Mikey, I know you had a bad one yesterday because I was with you.
Yeah, that was the end of my week went badly because I spent the day with you, mate.
Thanks for you making that like I was actually.
Thanks for encouraging me. No, but actually, I've got to say it's been a rough week, like with work and everything going on, and I've been exhausted. And whenever I'm really tired, I'll always go for something to pick me up, like whether it's a chocolate or I'll grab that pie for breakfast because I work hard, I deserve it. Or
at breakfast, you've already worked.
Yeah, that's
You've
right.
worked hard at breakfast.
That shot of whiskey. That shot of whiskey. I did hard day yesterday. But anyway, failed a little bit, but I'm still ahead on where we started. But it's a bit of a reset starting tomorrow. We'll get there.
Always tomorrow. Thank God for Mondays.
I've got to say,
Mondays.
this topic is so timely into how our weeks have been.
100%.
I think this is going to help us so much.
You bet. Absolutely. Jamie?
It's been a full-on week. One thing I did start this week, which has helped a lot, is that I started my planner again and just sort of like laying everything out made a big difference about, so just trying to add small things. Did I tick all the boxes? Absolutely not. Did I hold you accountable? Absolutely not. I don't actually have no idea where you were this week, actually.
Thanks for that, mate.
So there's one thing I need to improve on, but I'll be on your back this week, mate. Don't worry.
Good. Yeah, well, it wasn't a bad week. Yesterday was a bit of a throw off because I was hanging out with Mikie, so I blame him. He blames me, I blame him. But well, look, that's really good, fellas. So look, let's keep up that accountability. Like I said, we're not going to do our Ask Us Anything this week, or the Man vs. Machine, or the catch up. I'll have a special guest that I want to get straight in today and won't keep her waiting too much longer because there's a lot in it. And I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot out of it, you guys here on the panel, but also the guys listening. So let's get right into it. Today's episode, I can guarantee you, is not going to be light. It's not comfortable, and it's not going to be easy to hear. Dopamine, the chemical that is supposed to motivate us, reward us, and push us towards purpose has become the same chemical that is quietly wrecking men from the inside out. It is behind the urges we hide, the habits we pretend that don't matter, the cravings we chase when, life feels heavy, the late night escapes, the lack of drive, the emotional distance, the numbness, the relentlessness, the shame. And right now, men are drowning in more dopamine than any generation before us. We live in a time when men are overstimulated, underconnected, and overwhelmed, where the brain is bombarded with constant hits and shortcuts that numb us, drain us, and reshape who we become. Where confidence slips, intimacy fades, and purpose becomes harder to hold on to. Men today are tired in a way that sleep cannot fix, restless in ways that exercise cannot calm us, distracted, anxious, and wired because their nervous systems have been pushed to breaking point. And most men have no language for it. They just feel the symptoms. The guilt, the cravings, the lack of drive, the emotional distance, the shame after the habit, the frustration at themselves, the feeling of not being the man they know they should be. Today, we're going straight into that discomfort. And to walk us through it, we brought in someone who doesn't just understand dopamine. She understands men. She understands the brain. She understands the hidden battles that shape a man's life better than most men on this planet. She is not just a neuroscientist, she is a specialist in anxiety, addiction, attention to neurological rewiring. She has spent decades studying how overstimulation changes the brain. She has built clinics, written programs, helped thousands of men regain control of their minds. But what sets her apart is her story. Her work is science, but her tone is compassion. Her mission is to give men their power back. So settle in, take a breath, because this conversation will challenge you, but more importantly, it will change you if you let it. It will get uncomfortable, it's going to hit some nerves, but it might also be the thing that unlocks clarity, direction, and strength in ways you have not felt in years. Let's welcome to the show, Dr. Trish Leigh. Dr. Trish, thank you for joining us.
First of all, I've enjoyed listening to you all, and I am so glad to be here. And that's such an awesome intro. Really, I appreciate that. The gravity of the situation, but then the hope and, the light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I was just saying to you before the show, and I was saying to the fellas too, I've watched so much of your content for so much, probably a bit over a year now. On I think it was TikTok I first came across your stuff. And I'm like, wow, I think this lady really, really knows what she's talking about. And that's obviously not coming from, I just, what you says makes sense. I followed you.
Well, first, people are a little miffed when they hear me, but I am on a mission to help people, create awareness and then inspire people through knowledge and, the strategies and steps to take. So, yeah, that's usually people are like, you popped up in my feed, like, I'm glad,
Is it concerning if you do pop up in our feeds because of what you deal with? Like when I see you pop, I'm like, okay, why are you popping up in my feed? Have I seen something?
I think at the beginning of when I pivoted my work into pornography addiction and explicit matter, that definitely was a telltale sign. But now I think I kind of cover more ground, so it's not necessarily an indicator, but definitely in the early days.
No, well, look, I appreciate coming across your stuff because of obviously the stuff that we do with men, so much of your content, and which we're going to get into, but it's very, very much needed. Look, and leads, I guess, really into how I want to kick this off. But from where we stand, like we have the fastest, easiest, and most secretive access to anything and everything explicit and straight out mind-numbing content right at our fingertips in today's society. As a cognitive neuroscientist that specializes in this field, with your experience, the people you've helped and the stories that you've heard, are we living through the most addictive period in human history?
Yes, the answer is yes. And I'd love to frame my work first in that not only is my approach in the way I help people cognitive neuroscience, in my practice, I use neuroscience technology. I'm able to visualize how a person's brain is performing. And the dysfunction that is caused by explicit matter and pornography. So this isn't just me, theorizing this. I could see how people's brains perform and the impact and remediation. So I've done over 50,000 brain scans. That's a low estimate. So I see this in people's brains definitively. The answer
When you
is
say-
yes. And let's just put it in easy terms, because I like to make things logical, right? Before high-speed internet pornography and social media, I'd love to touch upon both of them. There was one guy with a harem who could ever get this much dopamine. Now it's everybody who has their phones in their pocket. So this is impacting, men in particular, but society at large like no other time before.
When you say the 50,000 brain patterns or something, when you look physically, like if you were to put, say, two X-rays side by side of a man that's never really delved into this, but also someone who has, are you saying there is a physical, like you can actually see the difference with your own eyes?
Yeah, it's functioning. So it's a functional measure. It's called EEG, electroencephalogram. So many people are aware of EKG. That is an evaluation tool to measure the electrical energy in the heart. A lot of people have had an EKG. Many people haven't had an EEG. It measures the functioning. So it actually takes it a step further than just structure. It can tell if there's structural damage, but it's looking at minute by minute, second by second functioning. And the answer is yes, definitively. So I've been working in this field for a long time using this technology. Before I pivoted into explicit matter, the pattern that I now see all the time, every single brain map, basically, I never saw before I pivoted. So I've named them. There's two patterns. I've named them strain brain and drain brain. Drain brain is the more concerning of the two. That's the one I literally never saw. And I was so inspired, I'm stretching that word, after seeing this pattern so many times, that last year for Christmas, I hired a data scientist to do a study with me to get this pattern into the scientific literature.
Wow. That's actually quite mind-blowing. If you are looking at brain patterns on scans on what people have gone through, emotions and traumas and all that kind of stuff, but yet when you look at explicit matter, you're seeing something that you've never seen before.
Yeah. And it's validated scientifically by more people than me. I have a book out. It's called Mind Over Explicit Matter. It's published through HarperCollins, a major publishing company. There are hundreds of scientific citations in that book, and many of them point to studies that show that there are structural and functional changes due to pornography consumption. So the way I look at it, it adds to that literature, being able to see it on EEG.
This would still be a bit of a pioneering field, I'm guessing, because there's still a lot of studies that are being done on the impact of porn on young people of a long period of time. So you're really pioneering in this field.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be. I didn't mean to at all. It all happened on accident. And what I mean by that, and the story is in my book, is that I pivoted into porn addiction because a friend of mine, who also was a client of mine in my clinic, I didn't know that he was wrapped up in porn addiction, but I knew he was struggling, and I knew I wasn't able to help him in the way that I was able to help my other clients. So his wife basically made him tell me. And, I was perplexed, but just the way that I am, I dove right into it, and it just connected all the dots in what I already knew, just extending it. And from that minute on, I couldn't let it go. I felt like I had this secret and nobody else in the world. And, the impact of it on men in particular, their relationships and their families. And I know people accuse me of hyperbole, but that's why I was so excited to have a book contract, because I was able to put it in an organized book, all backed by science. But I call it the silent tsunami. A tsunami comes, it's actually a crack in the ocean floor, miles and miles down, but then it wipes out the shore and it devastates everybody. Most people don't understand a tsunami starts, miles and miles away. That's how pornography addiction is. It starts by a crack in brain functioning, brain dysregulation, brain dysfunction. And from that crack, that's where mental health issues unfold, physical health issues like sexual arousal dysfunction and ED, which are through the roof, anxiety, depression, ADHD, then a breakdown in relationships, and then a person's work breaks down. So this has lasting implications unless through the power of neuroplasticity, a person makes the decision and then takes the proper steps to affect change and back themselves out.
That's such a cool analogy too. I mean, from all my research on tsunamis from movies, the first thing you always see is the water drawing out. That's when they're always like, "Oh, something's coming." But it's a really good analogy for us as men, because I think there is probably telltale signs for us, just a drawing away, a bit of an isolation, a moving back from normality. But no one can understand why that's happening, and I think even men themselves don't understand it. And it's almost like that precursor to a tsunami in our life, whether it be relational or mentally, physically, emotionally. We could probably have telltale signs early of that drawing away, but not know what that means. And I think it's such a great analogy for us to sort of grab onto this concept and this topic to go, bit of a test for us. What's that look like in our life before this hits? Because there is warning signs. And so, keen to unpack.
Yeah,
them
absolutely.
today.
And I think most people don't understand how everything connects. That's why I set out, almost a decade ago now I just started making YouTube videos, like without like intention of being a YouTuber, but just to show up and tell people. The first video I made says absolutely nothing scientific. It just says porn is bad for you. It damages your brain. Don't watch porn, and that video took off. People showed up and asked me to make more videos. And now I try to connect the dots. And I know, especially with erectile dysfunction and sexual arousal dysfunction, so many men don't get that it's their porn use. And when they hear me say it and it makes sense to them because I explain it, light bulbs go on. And just to tell you one more thing too, is that I used to work, my husband and I have a brick and mortar office here in town where I live. I've taken even before I pivoted into porn, I took my practice online. Everything I do is using online portals and at-home technology. So this isn't just isolated to my region. I work with people in almost every country around the world. This is universal issue for people around the world.
One thing that came to me when you talked about the patterns that you see, what is the difference between strain brain and drain brain?
Sure. Strain brain is the easiest way to talk about it, and I think it'll resonate with you all and most people, is that strain brain is a brain that's using too much extra fast electrical energy. That is the speeds that give you anxiety, stress, rumination. It makes it so you can't sleep. Lots of hot, fast energy. That is the energy that needs to be soothed. So you're done working you work all day long, you're beat, but you're also stressed out. The stressed out piece is the first part of strain brain. The second part is extra slow energy that's being used excessively, the energy of fatigue. So now you've got a brain that's operating so far out in the extremes, because what's supposed to happen in a regulated brain is that throughout your day, you're mostly using the speeds in the middle for calm focus. And that's circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is you feel calm and alert, but you can focus if you need to. You can concentrate deeply when it's time to. Something stressful happens, you can respond, not react, respond. And then the stress comes down. You get in bed, takes 15 minutes to fall asleep, catch the sleep cycle, sleep like a baby, wake up and do it all over. That is not happening for the vast majority of people. They're in strain brain, super stressed out, super exhausted, pushing through, using porn to self-medicate, soothe and stimulate. Drain brain is it is an extension. If you stay in strain brain too long, it's just like your car. If you're accelerating and braking at the same time, you'll blow the transmission, right? That's what drain brain is. Drain brain is the dopamine receptors in the reward center become desensitized. The brain becomes stuck in neutral. That's why arousal dysfunction happens.
It
They're both
feels
awful. They're both awful for people.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting so many answers to so many problems that we hear from men. Literally, just in those two, the differences between two types of strained brain and trained brain.
For like a symptom sort of wise, or sort of the way that I'm sort of looking at in a layman sort of way is that if you're sort of overthinking a lot, would that mean that you're probably in strain brain? And if
Yes.
you're withdrawing and like not feeling like anything's satisfying you, or you're in drain brain? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. Drain brain is more depression, lack of motivation. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
And the main thing with drain brain, those are people who are becoming aware that they now have sexual arousal dysfunction. That is the pattern that is associated mostly. But yeah, overthinking, you're stressed out, you're tired, you're pushing through, you do need, like, go back to the accountability intro. Strain brain is more about, you need a hit of dopamine from something, chocolate, you need a drink, you need a big meal or a bag of chips. All of those are fast dopamine producing. You need screen time, you're scrolling, you're seeking, you get on social media. That's all strain brain. Drain brain's more like you're on the couch and it's difficult to get off, and you may still need to go to all of those dopamine producing activities.
It's because when it comes to sleep's one of my biggest things that I battle with. Mike and I talk about it all the time.
At 2 a.m.
We talk about it at 2 a.m. because we're normally messaging it. But it's interesting you say that, because I know with what you're talking about and what you specialise in with dopamine and, the brain activity, yes, pornography is such a major player in that. But yes, like we also said, with the doom scrolling on the phone and social media and that kind of stuff, I mean, it's just those, whether it's porn or whether it's, like you said, the bag of chips or the big meal or the drink or whatever it is, it's like we're searching for it. And I've noticed with myself, I've always been a terrible sleeper, and I find now, especially the last couple of years, I'll wake up 2 a.m. because 2 a.m. seems to be my wake up time, and I just genuinely hate it. But I'll wake up at 2 a.m. and as I'm awake, the first part of me is like, oh, I can't believe it's 2 a.m. But then there's also that little part of me that gets excited because I get to grab my phone again. And it's weird. It's like I'm reaching for that, like, oh, I've woken up at 2 a.m. This sucks. Oh, but that's okay because I get to look at my phone. And I will scroll for 2, 3, 4 hours, and then I get a headache, and then I get lethargic, and I'm like, oh, what's the answer?
I was gonna say, what I'm about to say, probably, right? Or if not, this is the awareness piece. Is that, first of all, if you wake up at 2 a.m., that's the first telltale sign that you are stuck in likely strain brain to some degree. And just to qualify this too, like, I talk about it as strain brain and drain brain, but everything exists on a continuum, so there's people who are I use standard deviation, statistical measures. So there's people who are, 99.9% stuck in strain brain or drain brain. Then there's people who are 20% stuck in these patterns. So they exist on a continuum. And I don't know if you've seen this in any of my videos, but in my videos, I use 3 a.m. I talk about if you wake up at 3 a.m., so if you wake up at 3 a.m., your brain has not fully caught the sleep cycle. It doesn't catch the sleep cycle because of the dysregulation that I'm talking about. There's strategies that you can use. Number one is, if you do wake up at 2 a.m., you cannot pick up the phone. And if you pick up the phone, so let me back up for 1 second without, going into a lot of detail. The way the sleep cycle works is that your brain is slowing down and speeding up around 4 times per night. As you get in bed, I already kind of told you, with circadian rhythms, it takes 20 minutes from your brain to slow down enough to fall asleep. If you're in strain brain, it doesn't do that. Many times what happens is, if you're in strain brain, you're also in what's known as adrenal fatigue. You'll just kind of crash. You'll be out in 1 second. A lot of people think if they fall asleep in 30 seconds that they're really good at sleep. It's really that their system is so exhausted, they crash. Or if you're using anything to get to sleep, like screens or marijuana, a lot of people use marijuana to bring their system down. If you have to use anything, your brain is not regulated catching that cycle. So if you don't catch it, your brain speeds up and slows down throughout the night, but yours never slowed down enough. So now at 2 o'clock, during one of those speed up sections in the cycle, you fully wake up. Where if you were actually in the sleep cycle, you wouldn't wake up. So you can teach your brain. The way to do it is to not grab the phone. And what I tell people to do, nighttime's tricky, and I work with clients all over the world, is to create a music playlist. And if you use Spotify or anything like that, you can put a timer on it, and it has to be soothing. You're teaching your brain to go back to sleep at 2:00. If you pick up your phone, you're inadvertently training that puppy of your brain that 2:00's awesome because I get to go back on my phone. You have to train the puppy now. We don't go on the phone at 2 a.m. We use these strategies to fall back asleep. And, I'm like the hair club for men. I used to be an awful sleeper. If you saw my brain, I was so stuck in strain brain, it was ridiculous. And now I know the difference of awful sleep and amazing sleep. And it's twofold. Dopamine dependency has to come down, and the reinforcement loops that you're using, and it's different for all people, they have to be broken and changed.
I love that puppy analogy because that's where my head went. I was like, well, if you reward a puppy for doing the wrong thing, they'll keep doing it.
You looked at me when Dr. Trish said it too, like a little puppy, like looking at me like, oh, little puppy, man.
Bad dog. No.
Yeah.
You only like cats, mate.
You're in the...
It's true though. Like if you think of all the things you're doing as training yourself, that's why I tell people you're training your brain in your interactions with people. You're training yourself on how everything goes. That's why discipline can be so important. Discipline's not the end all and be all, but a disciplined life. I think of it as a flexibly scheduled life. It's very disciplined, but it has lots of room for flexibility. So I don't feel too rigid. But, I have everything's basically, pretty much scheduled, and my downtime is scheduled so that I don't get stuck in strain brain ever again.
I think that's a really good point to make, because I think a lot of people would be hearing this going, but this is just who I am. And to hear that,
it is not.
It can be trained out. I think that's going to give a lot of hope for people.
Yeah, I've recently made videos saying, you think of these things as personality traits. Your personality is the manifestation or the visual aspects of the way you've trained your brain. And I've worked with so many clients that have had a 180 shift in the way they walk through the world in the first month of working together, because their brain was in a very dysfunctional mode on day one. 30 days later, when they work with me with the technology, their brain can be in a completely different mode, where now, I've had people apologize to me the way they treated me in our first meeting to our second meeting, which I love because it's all that stress talking in the first meeting. And then now they have these realizations like, wow, I can do this a different way. And especially like going back to explicit matter, especially about, consuming content you fundamentally don't want to. And especially if your partner finds out and now you're on the brink of divorce, but you can't stop looking at it. That's when people really, they're desperate for change. You can change this. Lusting out in the world. One of my clients lives still, thankfully, in a tropical region. He's like, I have to move because I cannot stop looking at people. I'm like, don't move. Pump the brakes on that. Let's get working on your brain. He didn't have to move.
And I like the analogy of the training too, because a lot of people like, when people give up cigarettes, they're like, oh, I've got to go cold turkey sort of thing. But, if you have that concept where you're like, okay, well, at least if I don't do it today, if I can do it today, I can not do it tomorrow. And then if they fall off the wagon, then they can go, okay, well, let's go for 3 days rather than, do you know what I mean? So I think that that's a really good concept for people to look at. Do you find a lot of people struggle with, because they can't just stop, that they give up?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think that's where my work comes in, and where it's vital is that when I work with people, I tell them, don't try to change anything. Let's just regulate your brain. That's what the technology does. So a lot of people try to change their behaviors or change their mind, and their brain is still operating in that very stuck mode. So fundamentally, the technology will do it for people, and that's the asset of my work. But if that's not in the cards for people, it's really about a comprehensive strategy. And the strategy, I can give you the one-liner, which has, I know, helped a lot of people, is that we're going for a digital dopamine detox. Because what we're talking about is a dopamine dependency. Your brain is linked to the thing that you linked it to. And that can be different for different people. Your brain's linked to it. And you're using the reinforcement loops to get the dopamine from the source that you've trained it. So the key is digital dopamine detox, starting with pornography proper and then adiosing the rest of explicit content. But simultaneously, I recommend that people do a real life dopamine stack. And yes, it does involve all the chocolate and it does involve it does.
Is
and
there
you
one
don't
that
want to be
doesn't
in a
involve the chocolate?
Can we stop bringing chocolate into this? It's quite
I know we
triggering.
can exactly. It's going to be exactly. Everybody's going to be going towards it, but it does involve figuring out, like for you in particular, any person, where do you actually get the most dopamine from your real life, and scheduling a lot of that in your favorite activities, your hobbies, the people you love to be with, just laughing, and most people find they have a deficit of that. They have a deficit of fun with people, with downtime. I ask people on my intake form, I ask people how they express their creativity. I'm not even joking. On 95 out of 100, it says not applicable. NA. I'm like, creativity is applicable to everybody. I'll ask them what hobbies they have and they'll write them down. And then when I talk to the person, I'll say, oh, I see you're into, billiards. When's the last time you played? 7 years ago. You know what I mean? Wow. So like I call it a pleasure pathway reset, because it will actually reset the pleasure pathways in the brain, but it also resets the pleasure pathways back to the things in your life. And you stack them in the short run, but ultimately then your brain doesn't need as much dopamine and the stacking can come down.
This will be a real journey for discovery, I think, of themselves for most people. Just that thought alone, that NA for creativity. It's not that it's not there, it's they haven't used it for so long. And I think that is a big barrier for people just going, I don't know where to start. And I think it's okay to start with the first step and work their way through it. But just the fact that people don't know where their dopamine comes from or where that creativity looks like, that's a concern for me, that especially working with younger people, I work with a lot of younger kids, they wouldn't have any idea what
this is if it's okay, I'll give you a suggestion. What I have people do is I call it a dopamine determination activity. It's a brain dump. 3 minutes, you don't stop. 3 minutes in a journal or on paper, you write down all the things you love. And like, especially for adults, all the things you love now, all the things you loved when you were a little kid, all the things you've always wanted to do. And then the more exciting they are, the more dopamine, the more chill they are, the more serotonin. So once everything's down on paper, then I have people go through every single one of those things and give it a number 1 to 5 on how exciting they think it is. So like reading novels might be a 1, but skydiving might be a 5. Like I took motorcycle lessons a couple of years ago. I plan on learning to go to the gun range to learn how to shoot. But I wiped out on the motorcycle. So I pumped, I'm like, I did wipe out. That was not my fault. It was my trainer's fault. But I'm like, I should probably hold off.
It's always
I
the
should
trainer.
hold.
It's never your
I'm
fault.
going to hold off on the gun range after the wipeout on the motorcycle. But those are very dopamine producing, obviously, right? Like firing a weapon, riding a motorcycle. Those are adrenaline types of things. But I went and did them after I did my dopamine determination. Because I also have now this perspective of like, I kind of have like deathbed thinking. On my deathbed, will I have done all the things that I wanted to do? Like in work, I'm doing it in my business. I have 5 children. I don't know if you know that about me. I have a bonus son also. So I have 3 boys and 3 girls with my stepson included. Like being a mom has been super important to me. And now they're all young adults. And I kind of see my next season as kind of being the matriarch of our family, which has been a really cool shift for me. But like, I'm always making those decisions too, but I don't want my life to go by without trying these things and doing these things.
Hearing you speak makes me realize that there's a lot of hope for men, because you makes things sound so easy. Even just going back to your friend, you said that lives in a certain place that's beautiful and contemplated moving. and you talked him out of moving because you said, no, it's actually not so much a lot easier than you think, but you made it sound like, hang on, it actually is a lot easier than you think. When it comes to dopamine, we talk about it because Mike and I will talk about this yesterday on it. You know, we reference dopamine always as if it's a bad thing. Oh, you know, you got to get your dopamine hit and, control it because you're doing it for the dopamine. But what you've just said then in regards to, you know, the taking the bike lessons and the gun ranges, those things also give you dopamine, but they're good things. So why has dopamine been tarnished, and why have we done that? Like, why is it's always been connected to things that are bad? Why have we done that?
Yeah, and I already kind of hinted at it when I said that we have to reclaim the power of neuroplasticity. It's the neuroplasticity and the feedback loops, those reinforcement loops. That's actually the problem. The problem with screens, though, is that we're talking about supernormal stimuli. So these are artificially high levels of dopamine that real life activities could never compare to. So, for example, you know, riding a motorcycle is a level 9.5 on a 1 to 10 scale, right? Very high dopamine for most people if they don't wipe out and they can, you know, cruise through the countryside on a motorcycle. But unfortunately, pornography is a level 15, a level 20. It's not on the 1 to 10 scale. It's artificially high. It's a super normal, above optimal. That's the real problem. And now with everybody having a phone in their pocket, that's why the society at large is impacted. And actually, to go back to the introduction, because I was thinking, oh no, every man listening is going to absolutely hate me if he thinks I'm like a masculinity hater. Like, for the first time in history, masculinity is really at risk because of this, because so many men are getting connected to their phones. They're not getting connected to their workouts and creating strength in their body or embodiment. They're not getting connected to passionately with intention to their work that would help them have that confidence level. We know less men are getting into college and out of college than ever before in history. More men are staying at home with their parents because they cannot afford to move out because they can't get gainful employment. More men are single. They're dating and hookup culture. Like, there is a very big snowball effect at play right now, and we haven't even remotely seen it play out.
Especially too, if there's if that rate's a 15 to 20 on the scale, in time that 15 to 20 becomes normal and feels like a 7 or 8. Anything else lower than that, but there will just be no motivation to do anything that used to tick that list, you know, and we would go, oh, well, everything's boring now. But when 15 and 20 is the level that we start to live at, and that's unsustainable, everything else will feel useless, boring, unmotivated, pointless.
Yeah, and actually, they become stressors. That does happen where they become not motivating. But the way I talk about it in my book is that you get a dopamine flood from pornography, explicit matter. So what it does is now you're in a drought, you're in a deficit state back in your life, and there's more cortisol, the stress hormone, and you can't offset it with real life dopamine because it doesn't hit anymore. So now your partner is a stressor, where they used to be a source of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. The happiness trifecta, it's called. Your kids become stressors. Your work becomes a stressor. You stop doing your hobbies because they cannot compete. Because, like you said, even if they were 7, now they feel like dull and nothing. Exactly. They become stressors.
That's incredible just in hearing that. Because I you know, with all the men that we deal with, and I see marriage breakdowns especially, it's one of the things I don't like seeing is relationship breakdowns. And when you talk to men, they say that very thing, but when you do go deeper and you find out that there is that hidden layer of secretive habits that these guys have, what you've just said make perfect sense, because if you look at it as a scale, if all of a sudden you've gone for this dopamine hit that's sitting around about a 15-ish, like something way above a 10, anything else now below that is a stressor. So all of a sudden they're going back to a relationship like their wife. And it doesn't matter how good their wife is, their wife automatically is less than the 15. So the wife is categorized, compartmentalized into that she's a stressor. That's
Yeah, and
absolutely incredible.
men will ask me, men will say to me all the time when I first start working with them, they'll go, "My wife is gorgeous. She's incredible. She's so kind. She's so good to me, but she irritates me." They're like, "I don't feel connected." And then people will think they have to leave their relationship. And again, I say, don't leave anything until your brain is regulated so you can make that decision from a healthy standpoint.
Does it now break your heart when you look at divorce statistics of 1 in 2? When you look at a statistic like that, and what I'm seeing too is that it doesn't even matter what kind of lifestyle you're in, whether it be because like we're a lot of us guys here, we go to church, and so even within say the church lifestyle or out of it, it doesn't seem to matter. 1 in 2 marriages now are breaking down. When you hear a stat like that, do you sometimes just like put your head in your hands and go, if only you knew this could have been repaired?
Yeah, I'm not a head in my hands kind of girl. You can imagine what I do. That's not what I do. What I do is I go make a bunch of videos, and try to teach people. But I reflected on this very question a while ago, and I realized that I'm really here for relationships. I'm not here about screens at all. You know what I mean? I realize that because I'm like, do I really care? I always stay intentional in my own work. I'm like, why do I care so much about porn? I don't. What I care about is I do care about the mental health. I absolutely care about brain health. I do care about physical health. I mostly care about relationships, partnered relationships, first and foremost, but then people's relationships with their children, with themselves, the primary relationship with their creator, going back to church. Like, I believe that when you're caught up in all of this, that it breaks, it can't break, but it hides the divine connection to the true self that you could be if you weren't caught up in all of the dopamine seeking and searching. So it's really relationships is the most important thing to me.
I want to touch on something you just said then too, because Steve, on the end, he and I have known each other for 30 something years now.
Has it been that long?
Well, you look at but we've seen it, and because I can just think back to how many men, good men, that have just not so much fallen out of their marriages, because when we talk about young men, but fallen outside of just their walk.
Yeah, just become shells of themselves. And
Yes.
Absolutely. I just think back now, and they blame something else, but you're making it sound so simple, which I love, and it feels like
it is simple, but it is not easy. So like, I am not taking away the the struggle, but when you have the right tools and strategies, it becomes very simple. That's what people are lacking, and that's why I'm so passionate about trying to educate people.
One of the biggest driving factors for a man is obviously to find a mate or a wife, build a family, and do that sort of stuff. And then, like, it comes down to a motivation where you're like, well, if I can get that release from a phone, rather than working on my health, rather than working and looking better, rather than building financial security, rather than working on actually whether I can protect and the person I am myself to attract that mate. So really what they're doing is just taking that short-term solution, which is going to affect them horribly in the long term. And do you find that because they're not getting what they want, they keep chasing, like, they push those boundaries of, wanting more or looking at sort of more explicit stuff to try to keep getting that hit sort of thing?
You just described what I've been describing in the, behavioral lived experience way. You use the word motivation. Dopamine is called the molecule of motivation and more. It motivates you back for more where you got it from. So when you said, is it a matter of motivation? It is, because you've trained the dopamine to motivate you back for instant gratification instead of long-term executive functioning. Executive function resides in the prefrontal cortex. That's where the scientific studies that I referenced earlier show the brain has a decrease in structure and function. And I liken it to the captain of the ship. So this is what makes us different from animals. Our cognition is mostly in our frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex. Executive function is planning, organization, small steps towards a large goal. That part of the brain is not working when a person has desensitized the brain through dopamine. Those are the reward pathways up in the frontal lobe that feed forward from the reward center in the midbrain. That part's offline. And then I liken the older brain that's in the midbrain, the reward center, to a gorilla in the hull of the ship who only wants bananas. So now the captain has been tranquilized, literally by a flood of dopamine, and the gorilla, all he wants is bananas. So the ship of your life becomes completely derailed. Instant gratification, I want a banana, opposed to getting up to doing the more difficult work of like, okay, what do I want my life to look like on my deathbed?
Do you think that also online dating has a aspect with this as well too?
So toxic, yes. And the way most men are using online dating, first of all, it's very toxic in and of itself. And just to bring it back to what you were talking about in the introduction, the accountability, when you all were talking, I was thinking to myself, like, it's really refreshing to watch emotionally intelligent men interact with each other in a really lovely way. So what we're talking
Was she
about
talking
here,
about us when she
yes,
said that?
I'm
Oh,
talking
wow.
about, and
What
I was
podcast
trying,
is?
I was trying to think of a joke, like what one woman and four men walk into a bar, but I couldn't come up with one. But anyway, is that, what we're talking about here is emotional intelligence. So we need people to improve their emotional intelligence so that they then can make better choices. But going back to dating apps, it's filled with people with lower emotional intelligence. And I'll own that comment if I ever have to, because that is for sure. Then you have people using it for dopamine hits. So it's objectifying. Most men go onto dating apps to objectify women, to get dopamine hits just from their images, possibly from interactions with them, and then possibly from hooking up with them in terms of casual sex, all not leading them toward the goal of healthy intimacy and sexuality. So dating apps is incredibly problematic. And the people who I work with, they become very aware of that. And I have strategies to help them back that out. Social media is very much the same way. Social media creates what's called parasocial relationships, transactional relationships. So what is happening there is men are learning to be the consumer, women are learning to be the consumed. They're objectified. So women primarily put scantily clad images to get as many hearts and likes and fires as possible. Men control that, by doing it. And now we've got parasocial relationships where everybody's looking outside of themselves to this artificial validation for the directions they're going to go in their life. Plus, it is breaking down intimacy between people because very few people know, because of lack of emotional intelligence, how to meet a person, how to connect with them at a deeper level, how to build a relationship over, coffee, soup, lunch, then dinner, then a sexual interaction. That's, falling by the wayside.
We've spoken about this before. We did one of our early on podcasts about building a relationship that lasts. And I remember touching on the whole Tinder lifestyle. And we've mentioned it before because I actually was the article recently about, not so much the article, but the whole thing with Bonnie Blue recently, I don't, is she a porn actress? What would you call her? Content creator on something that does whatever she does.
So that falls
society.
it falls in the OnlyFans category. We can just throw it in there.
Yeah, because I remember the stunt she did with 1,000 men. I can't remember who I was talking to, and I was like, 1,000 men. I go, hang on, don't call those guys men, because when you look at the Tinder lifestyle, right, and this is what I hate about this whole dating app Tinder lifestyle. This is what I hate about it, is that you're getting men to start at the finish line and then working their way back to the start. Like, you're getting men all of a sudden given the absolute trophy and then working their way back to an introduction of just getting their name. And it's like, you've taken away, you've literally emasculated that man more than you could ever do in anything else.
Agreed.
And so when
Agreed.
Yeah,
and
when you
that's
watch
Oh no, I was just going to say that's a masculinity crisis right there at a pinnacle, because you have 1,000 men who are willing to line up one after the other to pay to be with a woman who was just with 999 other men. Like that's tragic for those individual men and for the culture that we're living in.
I think what
Sorry,
we
I didn't mean
overlook-
to. I didn't
No,
mean to
not at
interrupt
all.
you.
No, not at all. I think what we overlook is that we we make comments like, "Oh yeah, but it's not hurting anybody, so what's the harm in it?" And we say statements like that because when we say, "Oh, it's not hurting anybody," we're thinking the physical. But you not seeing what's happening in the brain. So to make the statement, "Oh, look, it's not hurting anybody," you as a man aren't seeing what's going on in the brain. Like when you're teaching yourself and you're creating that brain pattern of, "Oh, you know, I got the sex straight away and then had to work back to the introduction." Yes, you're not physically hurting anybody, but what you're doing to your brain as a man, because you can't see it, you make that statement. But you're actually damaging yourself way more than what we can even comprehend.
Yeah, and
It literally
I
emasculates us.
talk to a lot of men in that situation. They do understand the harm they're doing to themselves, because, like I already said, it's mostly low emotional intelligence. So, like, they'll hook up with a woman, but then that woman will stalk them for 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, the consequences might not be in the way that we see, but they own those consequences, and now they have all these transactional relationships, and they don't have the intimate relationships. But of course, that requires self-awareness.
I had a really good mate, probably about 3 or so years ago. Went through a really, really, really hard, tough time with a marriage breakdown, and once the marriage breakdown, he saw it as an opportunity to just go wild, and he did. He went wild on dating apps for a couple of months, and I remember meeting up with him just after, going, "Oh, how's the dating app lifestyle going now?" He's like, "Oh, I had to delete the app." And I go, "Oh, interesting. Why is that?" He's like, "Oh, just it got to the point where it was so unfulfilling." He said, "I would go home just feeling like crap." And I said, "Well, I told you this right from the start." Literally what I said to you. That's what that lifestyle promotes. It damages more the inner man than it does on the outer man. You think just because there's no physical harm, but what it does to the inner you, just because you can't see it, you seem to just negate it. But really the damage is so huge.
So
It is.
how do we stop a guy from going there? Knowing
I'm
where it's going.
I'm trying by sheer awareness of all, if the way it's very difficult, and I'll tell you why, is because how I've talked about regulation and dysregulation existing on a continuum. So after someone has gone through a marriage breakdown over a long time, that's dysregulating him more and more. So by the time he gets to the decision of the dating apps, he's a highly dysregulated person. The easiest way to think of that is like wrong-mindedness versus right-mindedness. You're in your right mind when you're regulated, calm focus, able to make good decision making. The more dysregulated you become, it's all the wrong decisions. What I try to have people do, and I do this myself in my own life, when people are in my program, as they're becoming more regulated, I help them set the markers to understand what the more dysregulated versions of themselves look like. So there's warning signs long before they get there. And, the way to try to help a friend is to pull him back out into more of the right mindedness of what he wants for his life, and to see that the choices that he's making lead him further away from his goals, not toward them.
Is also part of it being able to tell them that there's a different way as well, and sort of opening up those opportunities. Because, if everyone is on dating apps, but you're the type of man that can actually approach a woman, and that would, I guess, make you stand out in the crowd rather than actually just try to take that easy option.
Definitely. Yeah. And, my friends and I joke because a saying of mine is, "May I offer you a suggestion?" And then now my friend Chanel, she always says, "My recommendation is." So like, because if you tell somebody what they should do, nobody wants to hear that, right? And my point is, when you push someone, they will just push back. That's how it goes, you know? So if you make somebody a recommendation or a suggestion from your heart, you plant the seed. That's the way of helping them to shift. They have to choose the shift. This is the hard part. And you know this from your own journey and from all the people in your life. And again, for me, I've got 5 kids. I make a lot of suggestions. Let's just put it that way. and you know, when my kids would call me, and then, you know, my one daughter, Fiona, she would call me all the time, and she'd start ranting about a thing. And I'm like, babe, go do this. And she'd be like, don't tell me what to do. So now she rants for a minute or two, and I say, babe, may I offer you a suggestion? She's like, absolutely. And then I will offer that suggestion, and then she will thank me because I empowered her to do it for herself. So like back to that case is like, you know, you're a good looking guy. And I actually had this conversation with my son, Declan, yesterday, but he was kind of telling me back what I told him a little while ago, you know, because he had a girlfriend and they broke up. He's 21 and he's really eager to meet someone, you know, and it's difficult for an emotionally intelligent man, very difficult to find an emotionally intelligent partner right now. So, you know, he's not on dating apps or anything like that. He joined ski club and he's like, it's slightly toxic, ma, you know, and he's figuring out the other places he can go into the world. But I planted that seed. I'm like, you have to go into the world to find like-minded people that you may possibly be attracted to and attracted to you because you have similar interests. And I've done this with lots of clients. One client of mine who worked from home, so isolated. I'm like, you could not work from home all the time. He had his own business. So he ended up going to a work share space where he met other people. Really cool. Started to form some friendships. And then he would work from a cafe every Friday at the same time. And he ended up building connection with one of the women who worked there. Like if you never get out of your own, you know, chair, because people are just stuck in their chairs these days. If you never get out of your chair, how are you going to meet a like-minded person? And I have one more story, and I'll throw it back to you, is that I have another client, really nice guy. I've been working with him for years. He stayed in my brain training program for years. He never leaves his chair. And his number one goal on his intake from 5 years ago was to live a life of joy. So whenever I talk to him, I'm like, man, you are not going to find a life of joy in your chair. It's not there. But he can't get out of his chair yet, which is why he's not left my program. And I've given him a million strategies. So he's got to choose to come out of the chair.
Yeah, there's got to be a space where you get uncomfortable being comfortable. We always talk about the reverse. You know, people who are successful are comfortable in the uncomfortable. But the reality is, I think so many people are moving themselves into an environment thinking they'll be able to change it when they get what they need. But if you're meeting people on apps or on social media and that's where your world is formed, that environment is creating and controlling your world. And then when you meet that person, you wonder why you don't do anything else but stay on social media. Like being in the environment you want to be in long term, as you said, like-minded people. When I was young, I don't have much of a relationship with my dad, but I remember when I was about 14, 15, he met his wife now, but online. And I remember thinking, that's disgusting. Like, where did you buy her from? Like, because online dating wasn't really a thing. And I remember being so ashamed to go, my dad has just found someone on the internet. And now, like, working with young people, that is the norm. Like, to talk to someone and say, hey, go out and grab a coffee. It's such a weird experience for people. But we've slowly created an environment that we're trying to get men out of. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things is the understanding that what we've created is not normal.
Yes.
But we're trying to find normal within the not normal space and just going, because I talk to kids too, and some of the advice they get from their parents when they're bored is go climb a tree and they're like, what is wrong with you? But I'm like, well, before dopamine and, you know, on our phones and screen time, that was an exciting thing.
Yeah.
But we've created a world where anything that can be normal for, as you said, emotionally intelligent people now seems so counterproductive to what we've set up that it's almost discredited. And I think what you're saying, it's almost so simple that people go, well, surely that can't be the answer. It's too simple, but simple is what we need right now.
Yeah. My family and I had a very lengthy, you can tell where our heads are at. They're all kind of sort of like me. We had a very lengthy discussion one day about like just living online will be the norm soon. This is with my, you know, young or older teen, young 20 kids, you know. And I'm like, it's brutal because it's actually pretty much true, right? That everybody, they're all on Discord, all their friends are there, everybody's connecting in that way. And I'm like, just because it's normal doesn't make it healthy, right? Like this is happening. But I for a long time, for a long time I had a YouTube channel that's smaller where I just talked about brain stuff. Then I made that one video, I put it on a different channel, and that channel blew up, where I've been helping people with explicit matter. I've repurposed that first channel and I'm calling it Super Normal. Where there I'm talking about super normal as a double entendre, which I love double entendres, where it's super normal stimuli instead of going to super normal stimuli, creating a 1% lifestyle. And my point is that I think the same thing as you. It's crazy that now a 1% lifestyle is living a balanced lifestyle where you balance your screens, but you're mostly living your life in the real world. But on that channel, it's more like, it's not about like escaping pain. It's more about how you create that lifestyle because people don't even know the fundamental steps to a balanced life anymore.
So I do a thing every weekend where me and my fiance, we go sit on the beach after gym and we sit there. And it's one of my favorite things to do. But when I'm sitting there, I just think about how appreciative I am of actually living in such a beautiful place. Is appreciation also another way out of having those addictions as well?
Yeah. And actually, you're doing two things that, so you know how I told you we have strain brain? Strain brain, the extra fast speed is at 30 hertz, really fast. The extra slow speed is at 1 hertz, really slow. The energy of calm focus is around 10 hertz. There's a resonance of the earth that, especially at the ocean, you will attune to. It's called Schumann's resonance. You may have heard of it before. When we get out in nature, our brains will attune to 10 hertz calm focus. So anytime we're out in nature, and especially near the ocean with the ions that come off the salt water and all of that, you're really attuning your brain back to the healthy frequency, grounding, as it's called. Then secondarily, when you think and show gratitude, you're also bringing your brain back towards that regulated brain state. So I have people that I work with do, I'm filled with pragmatic strategies. I call it pragmatic hope, just so you know, like people are hopeless, but they don't know how to get from hopeless to hope. The way to do it is very pragmatically. I'm a super pragmatic person. There's theories, but then I try to figure out how to baby step your way through them. And the pragmatic piece is that, figuring out all these ways that you can experience gratitude. So I have people set 3 goals for the day. You can either do it the day before or the morning of. 3 goals, not 3,000. I used to set 30 goals a day. Every day I was behind in my life. Talk about strain brain. I'd set 30 goals. I'd do 6 of them. And at the end of the day, you feel like a total loser, right? When you do 3 goals and you do 6 of them, you set 3, but you achieve 6. Now you're a rock star every day in your life. 3 goals a day and 3 gratitudes. Because if you accomplish your 3 goals, you have 3 gratitudes built right in. But then I challenge people to go for like breadth and depth. So like I find the little things, and actually I've learned recently it has a name. It's called present moment nostalgia. Oh, I love it. Talk about feeling amazing in a moment. Like, I have one daughter at home now. She's 15. My other kids have left. My 4th son left for college just at the beginning of this school year a couple months ago. I feel every moment with my daughter now because I know in 3.5 years, I'm going to be an empty nester, So like when I'm with my kids, especially, or when you're at the beach, you're probably like, oh, that's present moment nostalgia. You're nostalgic about the thing you're experiencing right now. It shifts your brain into the present moment. When you're in strain brain or drain brain, you are not in the present moment. You're stuck in the past or you're looping into a fantastical future, a fantasy, or you're dissociative. You're not in your present. So, all the things you're doing, you're creating this embodiment and this present moment nostalgia.
I catch myself doing that all the time now. I'll see a photo, actually not a photo, I'll see a memory on Facebook pop up of like 2 years ago, this is where you were. And I stop and I go, oh, wow, like just to go back 2 years. And what it makes me do now is it makes me go, in 2 years' time, I'm going to wish to be back here. So enjoy the here right now. And I stop and I do it because my son's just in this room. He does all the tech and edit for me. He's just doing the stuff now. And I'll look at him a lot of the time, or my other kids, and I'll just stop and I'll just embrace the moment of like, in a year's time, in a week's time, in 10 years' time, I'm going to wish I was the man I am now, experiencing this moment, but I'm just overlooking it right now. So I'll stop and go, no. Tell myself to just smile, look, because I just did it like 2 nights ago. I think it was at the dinner table. And I'm just looking around the dinner table, all the kids, and just going, had too many. No, I'm just going to go.
They're like, Daddy having a stroke?
I think one aspect of that, because I go to concerts sometimes and you watch shows and all the rest of it, and you're enjoying the music, and everyone has their phones out because they want to show social media where they are rather than actually enjoying the moment. You know?
Yeah. My daughter and I just went to Billie Eilish. I'm like, Billie Eilish is amazing. And everybody had their phone out. I said to her, this is crazy. All of these people are going to go home and watch her videos instead of staying connected to this amazing, I took one little video of us. So I have one, and it's a cute video of us, it's 12 seconds. But yeah, people are missing the present moment. And then I even extend that, which I have now accomplished this in my life, thankfully. I'll extend that to the struggles, the crap will hit the fan, and I'm like, I get to be the person who figures this out right now. You know what I mean? Instead of being like, oh, I'm so stuck in this devastation. I'm like, I call it a historical dig. I'm like, I got this. I've figured things out before. I can figure out this thing. And it's pretty cool now. Like, my kids will acknowledge that, they'll come to me. They share things with me. One thing just to kind of like frame this too is that I've never told my parents one struggle. Still, when I call them rainbows and sunshine. Oh, I just saw a unicorn, Mom and Dad, right? My kids will tell me about their struggles because they know I can show up. I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to shrink. If there's consequences, the real world consequences are definitely going to take shape and play out for them. But I can handle it because I've increased my emotional intelligence through this journey that I'm talking about, which has also taught me I've got another situation to figure out. I got it. And I'm going to be looking back at it going, I figured that out. And that's what I call thrival, having a thrive mentality, even when it's challenging. That's why, when you ask, do I put my head down? That's a survival mechanism, right? That's a freeze. And I might still freeze, meaning we have stress responses, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If I have a freeze response, I'm like, let's go, sister. You got this. And I snap myself out of it. If I want to yell, that's a fight response. I'm like, I'm not fighting. I'm going to collaborate and get going on the solution. Flight, same thing. If I'm running out the door, it's like, no. Approach is the opposite of flight. And fawning, just to round out the 4, fawning is, and I've realized in the past, I've done a lot of this. Fawning is just pretending everything's okay. And I'm bred for no conflict. My family is my family of origin. I also come from a family of 3 boys and 3 girls. And you would be shocked to know we've never had one conflict as a big family. We've never acknowledged one conflict, right? And I'm healthy conflict girl now. I'm like, we need to talk about this. Everybody else fight, flight, freezes, and fawns. And I'm like, come on, people, we can handle this. It's just a conversation.
You can see, I know you mentioned it at the start, just the intentionality of a lifestyle like this and the difference between responding and reacting. And I think hearing these stories, it just reminds me that this is not just about us. Like you talked about presence. When we're not present, yes, we rob ourselves of that moment. But I think the people around us, we also rob them of the opportunity of our presence as well, especially with kids. And I see people, I'm not on social media at all. And me and my wife are notorious for not answering our phones because we don't have them on us most of the time. And to everyone's complaint, they're like, I tried calling you. I was like, oh, I don't know where my phone is. And it's a crazy thought to people, but we love it. But I remember just being at parks and I have all these random kids wanting to play with me because all their dads are on their phone and I'm playing with my son or my daughter at the park. I'm constantly telling kids, go talk to your dad, or go away, like stop playing with us. But I'm the only parent interacting.
Yep.
And it's interesting that they can be present but have no presence. And that's not just robbing them. It's robbing their kids. It's robbing their spouse, robbing our mates. Like, it's really interesting that this is not just a selfish thing that we need to choose when we feel like it. This is actually bigger than us.
Yeah.
And I think if we miss that, we'll go, I'll sort this out when I feel like it, when I get time. But really, time is something we don't get back with our family and having those moments. 100%. And so the burning question I had is, how many hertz are in chocolate? This goes beyond us. Like, it can't be. It's our responsibility as men to step up, not because we're dissatisfied, but the reality of what we're causing in the environment around us. We have an obligation, I think, to look at this seriously.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like is the first step for people listening?
Yeah, and that goes back to, like, that's the pause that I had to take. This is actually about relationships, all of them, starting with the self, and the first step is, recognizing if you can't do this alone, you need help. It doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're not prepared. Another part of my journey, which I've always like discussing with my husband too, is I know now that I don't know everything. Shock me, right? So the first thing that I do, how I said to you, like, if I have a situation and I'm like, I feel myself being sucked to the middle of the earth, I'll be like, no, it's go time. We got to solve this. The first thing I do is to figure out the professional who can help me. I got myself an awesome accountant because I don't know anything about organizing my business finance as well. So I'm like, I need a good person here. I need a good person there. If you are struggling, that's why I've made, I think there's over 2,000 videos on my YouTube channel now. I'm making a ton of content. It's all educational, trying to help people. I offer a program. I have a digital program that people can walk through themselves. I have a one-on-one clinic where I work with people globally. And if not me, somebody, like, find that person that you feel like you can connect with and get help. And it's really about self-awareness. And I think of commitment as an event and a process. You need that first event. And it can be the rock bottom moment, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of the people I work with, it's the rock bottom moment. But it's that realization of, this is not how I want it. And the thing I'm doing is not creating the life that I want. And then get help in doing it, because my program is 4 months long. Like, it's not, I don't have people in a program for a lifetime. And I already told you, a month later, we see the work that I do is all measurable. I can see people's brains change within and across sessions. So they see that too. Like, transformation's just there for the taking if you want it, but you have to take the first step, like I've already said.
Dr. Trish, can I give you a couple of things that I've written down to play a bit of devil's advocate on, I guess, misconceptions and thoughts that men have, and just to get you to answer them, because these are thoughts that men do get. And
sure, only if you say, I'm a skeptic. Because I work with a lot of people. They're like, I've got to tell you, I'm a skeptic. And what I say is, I love a good skeptic. Let's go.
Good. Okay, so you want me to say I'm a skeptic. You ready? Well, I'm a skeptic that knows everything. I don't know if you knew that.
Do you just do what you're told, one?
Yeah.
I think she got a real dopamine hit out of asking me to say that. I think I made it.
No, I was only teasing. I didn't actually expect you to, but that was awesome. That was great.
Well, I said it now. I can't take it back.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
It's already out there. You can edit it out, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm going to say, Samuel, you ready? Just edit that part. All right, so I want to play devil's advocate for just a couple of questions on some stuff that we believe, and I want you to tell us straight. Some of the things, if both people in a marriage use porn together, then it's okay.
The way I liken that is, if you have two people who are severe alcoholics that are drinking together, is it okay? Like, it might be okay between the relationship, but it's not healthy for both of those partners individually, nor is it healthy for the relationship. It's toxic dynamics. It's the same thing. So sex is supposed to be an experience between two people. So if both partners are using pornography, they are taking themselves away from that interconnectedness. And again, science shows that if a person uses pornography, they are not as attracted to their partner. They actually have lower self-esteem issues themselves. So it's not healthy. No.
Can that also go over to like horrible TV, like Love Island and Muffs and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, it exists on a continuum, right? And I love that you brought it down all the way to television shows. Like we are living in a time of it's just all those shows are designed to hook people in for dopamine through drama, violence, and sexuality. And if you go online on social media, I liken it to those three things: drama, violence, sexuality. That's what sells these days. And the solution too, because I'm always solution oriented, I tell people to find a show if they're going to watch shows that motivate them and that help them to achieve their goals. I found this show. I don't really watch TV. My best friend Chanel, again, she told me about this show, Madam Secretary with Taya Leone. It was on CBS like years ago. Then it was on Netflix. It got taken off of Netflix. And I just started watching that. And so for me, I'm watching a woman in a position of power who handles everything compassionately with empathy, but she also doesn't take anything from anybody. And she's always looking for the greater good. So when I watch that show, I wake up the next morning wanting to rock out my best life, helping humanity in a compassionate, strong way. If I watch Love Island, how do I wake up the next day, right?
Few less brain cells, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, next one. Phones, social media are here to stay. There's nothing we can do about it. It is what it is. It is what it is. Let's just go with it.
I agree that they're likely here to stay. And I challenge people to think of what are the likely outcomes. Like take the outcome of everybody having a phone, even children, in their pocket long term. What's the outcome there, right? It can only go two ways. Of course, it's a continuum, but the two extremes are we continue down the path that we're going, which means all the men will be addicted to pornography. Women will become objectified and be posting all hypersexualized content. Everybody will be into the external validation. That's course one, right? Course two is each person starts making the change for supernormal living. Each person starts balancing out their social media use, their screen time use, and they don't use pornography. They desexualize their content. They start engaging in intimacy. And I use my youngest daughter, Saoirse. She's 15. She rides horses. I use her as the example. Of course, she's the youngest, so this is why she is the example of using technology in a really healthy way. She rides horses. She just posts her horse videos, never sexualized, even though she's absolutely gorgeous. She uses it to connect to the entire horse community, right? She's super connected in a really wonderful way. Those are our two choices. So I want each individual, not to go, oh, it is what it is, to go, there's something to this. This thing is controlling me. That's why I refer to it as miswired by the algorithm. And I think if you start seeing how the algorithm's serving you things to keep you chained, that's when you're like, no way, man, I'm not going to be chained by this. And you make one empowering step, and before you know it, you've got a super normal life. So I think, yes, it's here to stay, and no, it doesn't have to be. We can back ourselves out. And just one more thing about that too. I think of it and I liken it to smoking. Everybody smoked. And you know how people stopped smoking? It wasn't really because there was science showing that smoking was bad, because there was a huge disinformation campaign. The way that it stopped is people finally believed that it was addictive, even though they were being told it's fine. They finally saw that it caused lung cancer, and they finally believed that secondhand smoke was real. So I always say, when it comes to screens, we know that it's addictive. Supernormal stimuli, totally proven. There's books and books coming out how screens are creating ADHD, anxiety, depression, brain dysfunction. We know that. We know that it's causing ED in men. ED's through the roof. And just back for 1 second on the science of screens, screen use and ADHD, anxiety, and depression have the same trajectory. The more the screen use, the more of those mental health challenges. They're directly linked. And we know, like we've already talked about, it's impacting relationships.
As a parent to, see, because I'm 46, and so I was my first mobile phone, I think it was 17. Social media is now, I think, 20 years ago. So I was the normal kid growing up with push bikes and, playing in a park, and then everything got introduced to me. But we do have a society where social media and phones and iPads that were introduced to our kids at such a younger age. What would you say to a parent that's got a child that, to the parent's belief, is addicted? How would a parent, or what should a parent do to first implement getting the child off, but how would they navigate the child off and get them to understand that, hey, this is an addiction? Because a lot of young kids wouldn't understand what addiction is. So what would a parent, or what should a parent do to get that child off this addiction?
You know how you premised, or you set the premise that people might not like what we're going to say here? Well, I'm about to say some things that people might not like. And this comes from, that's why I wanted you to know, not only am I a cognitive neuroscientist, I'm a mom who's had to mom things like this for
Give it to us.
23 years, is that you don't have to explain this to your child. You are their co-regulator. You are their frontal lobe. So you don't need to explain it to them, because you are the one who has to regulate this. And honestly, I learned this a little too late. And you know how I told you my journey has changed me and my emotional intelligence and my parenting, and I've been in a really good space for at least like a decade now, but I had to learn, because that was me explaining everything to my child. Now I just set really healthy boundaries. The kids all know the expectations. If they violate those expectations, there are natural consequences. I don't talk about it at all. I tell them what's going to be done. I tell them how to do it, and I help them on their co-regulator. I've had to do this for every piece of technology. My son Shane is totally into gaming. Gamers are going to game, right? So I had to teach him when he was young that he could go on games with his friends. They convinced me nobody can get anywhere on a game in at least an hour and a half. It was a little bit of a negotiation because I had it at an hour. He goes on games for an hour and a half, and then he would have to go outside and play with his friends. He's 19 years old. He still does that. They'll be on games. Then they'll be out playing pickleball or basketball. Then they'll go for food. Then they'll come back, play some games. Then they're back out in the world. He's in the world more than he's on games. I taught him that over a decade. That's the tricky part. That's not a 5-minute ordeal. So what I would tell parents is, don't talk to your child right now, and don't take their phone away if they're addicted. You want to have a crisis, take your kid's phone away. What you do is you start scaffolding it slowly, where you set the expectations. Like in my family, we have family expectations of things, that the way that it's going to go. So one thing I didn't do that I absolutely would do is I would have a charging station, and I would make my kids put their phones in the charging station at night. I would set that one out of the gates so that they didn't have phones in their room at night. My kids are, they call them digital natives. They were the first kids ever to get phones. So I was kind of like doing these things without even really understanding the consequences, because it was in real time. Now I know I would have made them have a charging station. Then I would set some of these parameters, like you can be on your game for X amount of time. With Seamus, like I never called him to tell him to get off. I made him set a timer to get off, because if I call him now, he's dependent on me to be the regulator. But if I teach him to set an alarm, it's teach a man to fish type of thing. His alarm goes off. If his alarm goes off and he pauses it and doesn't go off, that's when I come in and I say, bro, you didn't get off when you were supposed to, so you don't get to game tomorrow. That's the consequence. Business is in order today. The privileges keep rolling out tomorrow in terms of screen time. You let a breakdown in those privileges today, there are no privileges tomorrow. I teach them to regulate, and then now they all do it, which is like such a gift as a parent. Amazing, right?
I want to you said so much in there that I think it's super practical, and I love practicality because it's just simple how-tos, and I love it. I want to go back to one of the things you just said there, and I think this is probably going to lead into one of the most important questions of what I'm going to ask you. But you mentioned your son, Seamus, plays basketball. Who does he think the greatest player of all is?
I don't know. I don't know who he does right now.
Please
For the
answer
good of
it.
the group.
I don't know. He and I talked about this recently, and I have no clue. But that is a good question. I don't know.
Scottie
You would have said
Pippen,
not
we all know.
LeBron, right?
It's definitely not Scottie
LeBron James.
Pippen.
Have you ever heard of
It's
Shane
not.
Heal?
Who's that?
Okay, I do have a couple more couple of more devil's advocates if I can, and then we're going to let you
Let's
go.
go. Sure.
Porn actually helps men understand sex better. It's basically education.
So if you've ever watched those cooking shows, Saoirse and I like to watch Nailed It. If you ever saw that show where like, they cook all these creations and they turn out disastrous, like what, right? So what we're watching in pornography is, and actually I was on Jubilee Media, which is a very large YouTube channel. I went to LA. I debated 4 porn performers in real time. So what we all agreed on was that it's completely fake and that it's all, there's camera angles, there's a lot of enhancements, none of it's real. So essentially you're watching an artificial performance where people aren't actually enjoying themselves, nor are they enjoying each other. So there's no way that can be rolled over into healthy sexuality. We know most of it includes violence, and it's mostly one-sided with men using women as objects for their pleasure, for their own pleasure. That's the objectification. So there's just not a one-to-one translation. So you're getting a wrong education. You're being educated in the wrong direction, going back to what's your goal. And just one other thing about that too is that I already said healthy sexuality is an experience. So now if you have one person who's mostly watching porn in secret and their partner doesn't even know about it, and they couple it with masturbation, you've now linked your brain to yourself in a screen, not another human being, which is also artificial. And we know all of this is being compounded by that level 20 dopamine.
A question within what you've just said then, Rob, because I know there's been a massive increase these last few years on the changing of styles of porn, where it has become a lot of violence, a lot of increase in violence and things like this. When you have done brain scans and you say, hey, we can look at a brain of a normal person and someone who's consumed a lot of porn, or we can see the differences in the brain of a person who's consumed porn. A question within that, are there different brain patterns that also form when men watch certain styles of pornography, like romantic versus violent? Is there different brain patterns once again within that?
Yeah, I would love to know that. I don't know the answer definitively, but I do know that the more extreme, the more intense, and especially when it comes to something called edging. Edging is like a person who watches less intense porn and then they keep watching higher levels to get more and more and more dopamine. Those are the worst brain scans. Those are the people who tell me, I don't ask people to tell me what they're consuming, but I have thought to myself, I would love to do, I'm in the middle of doing one study right now. I'm like, I would absolutely love to study that to know, because I do see the brain maps on a continuum. But what I do know is the people who watch the most intense and the scenarios and the acts that are the highest level dopamine and create a lot of incongruency in their nervous systems where they know they shouldn't be watching it. I call it the friction point after my motorcycle days, where it's anxiety plus arousal. This shows up as very red chaos in the brain maps, very high levels of dysregulation. And behaviorally, edging is the most difficult type of client or brain map to help, because they can internalize the fantasy. The dopamine levels are associated with euphoric recall. They don't even need porn anymore, usually.
I remember I might have been talking to you, Mike, a couple of weeks ago and told this story, but I read an article 2 or 3 weeks ago of a porn actor, a male porn actor that was so addicted to porn himself as like a consumer, but now he's acting it. But he was mid-scene doing a scene and couldn't ejaculate at the end, right? And so they had to cut the filming. He went to the bathroom, got his phone out, started to consume porn, got himself aroused, got himself towards the end, and then came back and finished the scene, because the real life was less arousing than what this fantasy on his phone had become. And
he's linked to it. That goes back to his brain's linked to consuming it on a screen and it's probably like multiple performers and high intensity, that's dopamine desensitization at very high levels.
Incredible.
It is. I mean, just so you know, that's happening to millions of men across the world at a lower level that aren't telling anybody about it. They're trying to be with their partner and they can't. They go into the bathroom, watch porn for a minute or two. One couple that I worked with, and this is just one out of lots of people I've talked with, the wife followed him out to the shed because she's like, where does this man keep going in the middle of our intimacy? And she flies open the doors and he's out in the shed masturbating to porn because he cannot be with her without it. And so many men tell me they have to go to that fantasy reel in their head. And part of the solution is, when it comes to erectile dysfunction too, part of the solution is every time you try to go to fantasy when you're with your partner, pull yourself back into the present because you're desensitizing on accident. The goal of healing is resensitizing back to real life arousal.
Yeah, incredible. Because I see so many things now on erectile dysfunction, and it's go grab a pill, or there's so many remedies. But in reality, if men just took responsibility, created a discipline, and pulled themselves out of this addiction, they would literally be solving the problem that they're trying to medicate themselves with. And
yeah, ED meds are off the charts in terms of there's commercials everywhere. And I will tell you, for a lot of men who are wrapped up in porn addiction, the pills don't work because you need a certain level of arousal for them to work. That becomes a DEFCON level when they're like, no, I've got to get help on this thing.
Isn't that like the biggest warning for a guy? If you were starting to watch porn and you were told, hey, look, if you keep going, mate, you're going to get to the point where you actually can't even get stiffy. Like how, from a real crude, right, what it is, what we talk about masculinity, that's such a base level where you go, that's
but you know how that goes, because I talk to thousands of men. Nobody thinks that applies to them until it does. Because people write that in the comments, like, oh, that's the rare person. I'm like, no, it's not. This is happening at a mass level to men across the world. So, if you try to tell somebody that, they're like, oh, that's like extreme cases. That's like people who are watching animals. That's not the case. It's you know what I'm saying? Like, it's average people. It's your average Joes. No credit for that. No credit for that.
You held that joke in this whole time, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I just came up with it on the spot. I did come up with a joke though, but I haven't. I was trying to find a way to weave it in because I haven't used the exact term.
Oh, let us set up. I don't know. Tell us what we need to say to set it up.
Well, no, I was just going to tell you that like all these hertz and the speeds that I've been talking about, they're called brain waves. I always call them brain speeds. And then I talk about them as like the fast speed and the slow speed, but they're actually called brain waves. But that's the punchline to the joke. That's why it had to be included a long time ago.
Well, look, I have one more devil's advocate here for you. Two more, sorry. Okay. If I got more sex at home, I wouldn't need porn. It's basically her fault.
Nope, it's vice versa. If there was no porn, there would be more sex at home. And I always say, too, partners aren't dumb. Partners can, a couple told me yesterday, like she felt so much more disconnected from him and she's trying to be more and more connected. He was blaming her. It was a couple I was talking to, and she found him watching porn months ago, and now they're back on track. And he's like, we have been closer than ever before, and we've had more sex than ever before. He's like, I had no clue that porn was getting between us. That's real, what I'm telling you.
If a teenager is gaming all night, at least you know where he is. There are worse things he could be doing.
No, I'm old school with my kids. Like yes and no. Like, it's if you don't want your kid sitting in a chair, right? I want my kids living a full lifestyle, and I do not have my kids on GPS. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. All my friends have everybody on GPS, tracking in the family tracker. I don't know where any of my kids are unless they want me to. They share their location with me when they feel like they want me to have eyes on them if they're going on a trip or anything. And I love that. I'm old school. You all made it through life. I made it. It's like what you said, go climb a tree, go out. So I want my kids out in the world having experiences. Some of them, I'm going to get that phone call from Declan. Just got a ticket going 109 miles per hour. Thank you for calling me, son. I will help you get your own attorney. Right? And he's alive. He's alive. You know, you got to get out there and have experiences. Yeah, there's going to be more bumps in the road, but that's life.
I want to end on one thing. What's the biggest lie amongst all this that men tell themselves and they believe?
Is that everybody early on, it's that everybody does it and this is healthy part of masculinity. And, you know, it's a defense mechanism. And, you know, I've heard them all, just like, you know, my wife, you know, if my wife had more sex, if your sex life isn't what you want it to be, talk to your wife. Like, if you can have sex with a person, you could talk to that person about sex. They don't. You know, so like, you know, it's just that this is part of being a man. It's not a part of healthy masculinity. Like, it might be normal in today's culture, but that's why we're going for super normal living. Because if we follow this trajectory of normal, people aren't going to get the life that they want, and we're going to have a critical mass in society.
Which we're starting to see. It's literally
We are.
fast forward 10 years from now. Well, Dr. Trish, I cannot thank you enough for being a part of the podcast here. You've brought so much truth with a very raw, real, but compassionate way, and I thank you so much. Other than your book, which is Mind Over Explicit Matter, what else can men do to reach out to yourself? What courses do you have available? Website, things like that, because we'll
please,
further link up on what we do.
Definitely. Yeah. My website's drtrishleigh.com. And I have, like I said, I have a masterclass. I do brain maps. I personally do them with people all over the world. The first step is to spend time with me. So I can connect a lot of dots that people don't even know exist. If you have a feeling you have some dots, I can pull them all together and show you how it's impacting your brain. And especially if you're struggling and you've been struggling with any of this for a long time, if you have ED, I want you to know you definitely have significant brain dysfunction. You know, there's, like I already said, the programs that I offer are 4 months long. This doesn't have to be a lifelong journey of recovery. You just have to take the first step to get it going.
Fantastic. Well,
and then here's the joke. Are you ready?
Yes.
How does one brain say goodbye to 4 others? Obviously, it's with a brainwave.
Brainwave. I was waiting for it.
All right, not my best joke, but
we'll give it to you. That was great. Yeah, wow.
That's the cleanest joke ever told on our podcast.
All right, sorry. At least you know, like, where my head's at. I'm good with all the science stuff. Not so much with the joke stuff. So
No, we're not that great either.
We leave that to Jamie.
We leave it to Jamie. No. Well, once again, Dr. Trish, thank you so much for being a part of it.
yeah, you're welcome.
Because I know it's over there. You're in North Carolina, and it's late in the afternoon on a Friday for you.
Yeah. I'm going to my friends, my besties and I, speaking of, real world experiences, we are going to a pop-up dinner. They're going to be here in 5 minutes. This girl has to
Okay,
change.
I need to let you go.
But we're just check this out though. A pop-up dinner. We just got the location. Novelty in the real world, right? So we're going to this like secret location. It's with 40 people. So we're going to meet new people. This is what I encourage people to do. Get some, good dopamine juju going in your real life. So I'm off to do that. Hopefully you all are off to have an amazing Saturday.
Coffee. That's where we're off to.
Yes,
what a great idea, though. That's a great idea, because food and people are like the two things I love more. I just anyway.
Yeah.
Look,
think
we're holding
think
it too
about
long.
how. Yeah. No, sounds great. Okay.
Go
Thank you very
enjoy it.
much. I'm glad to be here. Yeah. Thank you. Have a great
Thank you.
night.
Thanks, Trish.
Great day.
Thanks,
Okay.
Catch you later.
Bye.
Take care.
Well, that's incredible.
Yep.
That was great.
Absolutely incredible.
So much out of that, hey.
Insane. Well, guys, thanks for joining us here once again on the Average Joe's Men's Collective podcast. You guys are absolute legends. Like we say every week, hit up the website, grab some merch, give us a review, and we will see you guys next week. Guys, thanks once again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, boys.